السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, in today's khatira, I'm going to go over a handful number of ways that we can maximize our reward during these last numbers of days of Ramadan and to limit any factors that may take away from that reward. So, to begin with, the first way I will mention is to avoid sins. And this is, of course, an obligation that we have, whether it's Ramadan or not, but there's a special emphasis now that we are fasting. There's a hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ says, whoever does not give up forged speech and evil actions, then Allah is not in need of him leaving his food and drink. What that means for me and you is that when we are trying to fulfill an obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we are trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what we should not be doing is pulling ourselves down by committing sins, pulling our efforts down by committing sins. And one of these sins that I really want to highlight, now that we're seeing each other more, we're talking to each other more, we're congregating more, is the sins that come from conversation. What this really means is those sins of backbiting, those sins of insulting, those sins of making hurtful jokes towards one another. These things come out more because we are having more conversation, so our tongue is more likely to slip. A precaution that we can take to avoiding this is to reduce those conversations altogether. By reducing those conversations, we can have less of a chance of having our tongue slip. So this first point really emphasizes giving an extra precaution towards avoiding those sins, especially the sins that can come from our tongue. The second piece of advice that I will give is to pray Isha and Fajr in congregation, specifically for the men especially. Praying Isha and Fajr in congregation. There's a hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ says, whoever prays, essentially saying, whoever prays Isha and Fajr in congregation, all it takes is 10 minutes at night, 10 minutes in the day. Whoever prays this will get the reward as though they prayed the whole night. So within 20 minutes, you'll get the reward of 8 hours of worship in the night. It's that simple. And especially on a side note, I want to make a point that this reward is there the whole year. It is not that it's only here during Ramadan. It is here the whole year. So we should make it a priority, especially as the men here, to show up to the masjid, to pray Isha and Fajr in congregation. The third point that I want to make, in order to increase our rewards, is to really increase our ibadah, increase our acts of worship. There's a wisdom in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making our period of fasting only 30 days, only about a month, only the month of Ramadan. It's not longer than that. Imagine if our period of our fasting was 3 months, 6 months, 8 months. How much of a burden would be on us? But there's a blessing, a mercy, a wisdom in Ramadan only being about a month long. It's so that we can go harder. We can push ourselves more without worrying about the consequences on our body, or the consequences on our sleep, our feet, or our stomachs, without the consequences on our obligations. We can go harder. So as these last days of Ramadan are coming, I advise every single one of us to push ourselves harder and increase our acts of ibadah. For us, for every single one of us, there's probably a couple acts of worship that we feel more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through. Whether it be dhikr, whether it be reading Quran, whatever it may be. I advise every single one of us, including myself, to increase those acts. Increase, increase, and increase. And one of these acts that I really want to give special attention to is to increase the length of our sujood. This is something we see Imam al-Muthanna do from time to time, is to lengthen the sujood, so that we can make more tasbih, we can glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more, so that we can make more dua. And this is really a way we can drive ourselves closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the last ayah of Surah Al-Alaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاسْجُدُ وَقْتَرِبْ, and prostrate and draw close, meaning and prostrate and draw closer to Allah. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us there's an association between prostration and drawing closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this third point really emphasizes increasing our acts of worship, and increasing our ibadah. The last point that I want to leave off with is that in this month of Ramadan, Allah's forgiveness is something that we should all strive for. Allah's mercy in this month is greater than all the other months. And so when we have the chance, whether it be before we break our fast, whether it be before we start our fast, whether it be when we're in the masjid waiting for the iqamah, whether it be when we're waiting in the masjid after Taraweeh, we should keep on asking for forgiveness. We should keep on saying, Allahumma gfirli, Allahumma gfirli, Allahumma gfirli, astaghfirullah, 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 whatever it may be. Keep on asking for forgiveness, and keep on asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, and keep on asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to handpick one of us, to be one of those who are granted Jannah without any account of our past or future sins. And so I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'll end up with that, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all of those who are granted Jannah without account. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to free all of those individuals who are being oppressed right now, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us all Jannah al-Firdaus. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. جزاك الله خير.